Hey friends, Catherine here from Research Rockstar, and today I'd like to talk to you about an important topic, which is how do you make sure that your research reports look current? After all, if you've done all this great work to conduct a research project, you've executed everything brilliantly, but then your report looks dated, it loses credibility, it loses potential impact. So let's talk a little bit today about how to make sure that your research report looks modern and current. So one of the things that is useful to do is let's just step back for a second and talk about some of the attributes of reports that do look dated. So if you think about all of the reports you've seen over the last few years, think about the ones that kind of struck you as maybe being a little out of touch. So I'm going to share some slides from a mock-up of things that you do commonly see in sort of outdated reports. I apologize to those of you who are listening to this on iTunes, on a podcast. I would suggest for this particular conversation that you might want to pop over to the YouTube version to see the visuals, but I'll describe them as best I can. So there are a few important attributes that make a research report look super dated. And one of those attributes is when all of the slides are a single column format. So for example, it's very common in a research report to have a slide, perhaps in your methodology section, that says research objectives and then lists the objectives. Well, in a kind of conventional sort of older way of doing things, you would simply have a slide that listed those as bullet points. So maybe your PowerPoint template just has a list of bullet points, and you've got your first level bullet points and your second level bullet points. Well, again, that's just a one column layout, right? You've just got one big list. It takes up the whole width of the slide. Another thing that you would typically see in those types of reports is, very standard first level bullets and second level bullets. And again, it's just a very conventional way of doing things that is a little bit outdated. Another thing you see in sort of outdated looking reports is the slide where there's one big bar chart, right? There's the title of the slide is usually either the question that the chart is based on or a key takeaway based on the data that's in the chart, but basically just a title and then one big large bar chart. And that takes up all of the real estate. If you find that as you're looking at your own reports that this is starting to sound a little familiar, you have a lot of reports where most of your slides are one column format with one big chart in the middle, that's a good sign that you're probably producing reports that are a little out of date. So again, for those of you who are listening on the podcast, I encourage you to come over and take a look at this very dated example I'm showing you. Now, this is a hypothetical example. I just kind of mocked this up to kind of illustrate what a one column, the one chart, one slide kind of look is that frankly for many years was very conventional in market research, but today is absolutely out of touch. So if that's out of touch, then what's a researcher to do? So I mocked up an example of what is more aligned with the current look and feel. And this is an example that I created that shows how we can take advantage of current sort of design aesthetics to create a PowerPoint template that will help you to have a more current, modern look for your research reports. So one of the things that you'll notice is that in more current looking reports, the aesthetic is more about having a clean design or flat design. And if you don't know what those things are, I encourage you to go over to your favorite search engine and look at them. But I'm showing here, for example, a hypothetical title slide that has a very flat or clean sort of look to it. Also, in this particular example that I've mocked up as an example of a more modern look, you'll see that I don't have a lot of slides that are one column format. Here I show an example of a research and methodology slide that has two parts. That is, the slide has been divided, the real estate of the slide has been divided into two parts. On the left-hand side, there's a dark background with the objectives for the project listed. On the right-hand side, there's a white background with a ghosted image, and then the key points about the methodology, the participants, how it was moderated, when it was conducted, and so forth. By creating that two-column format, it helps to create a more modern look and feel. Another thing in this particular example that helps to create a more modern look and feel is bringing in some icons and some graphics to amplify the message. So in this case, I've created a simple one-page executive summary where we are identifying key contents from the research as being sort of in three columns, if you will. So I start with what we wanted to learn with an icon, and that's where we restate the objectives. So in my hypothetical example, I've got three objectives all under an icon and the phrase we wanted to learn. So these are the things we wanted to learn. The middle column is what we learned. Okay, so for each objective for the project, what were the key things we learned? It's a really nice way to make it easy for your reader to see what the objectives were and what the key findings were. And then in the third column, I've created an icon that sort of looks like gears. It's meant to sort of amplify the message of action and activity, how what we learned can be applied. We've all heard it before. How do I make sure that I'm going to be able to use this research? Help me make this research actionable. Well, in this example of a possible one-page management summary, I'm saying that's great. So now for each objective on that same slide, you can have what we wanted to learn, what we learned, and how it can be applied. And in this example, it creates a simple one-page summary. Now it's just one page. You're going to need some more of the meat behind it and subsequent slides, but at least now the research consumer, if you will, your business executive, your research client, gets one page with a more modern look and feel that allows them to easily see that yes, you understood their objectives, yes, you're delivering the key findings for those objectives, and you're even giving them, yes, what they can do with those learnings. So it's a more contemporary look and feel and a lot of value for the client. In this particular template that I've created as an example, you'll see that I use a lot of two-column formats. Sometimes the columns are evenly split, and sometimes they're weighted more to one side or the other. Another thing that you'll see with a lot of the more contemporary research report designs is trying to step away from over-reliance on bar charts. You know, trying to come up with other ways of showing priorities or showing which attitudes or behaviors are more common versus less common. And in this particular hypothetical example that I'm showing here, for those of you who are on the YouTube, I'm showing how in a focus group, it's very common to have a tally, right? Sometimes you're doing a large number of focus groups, like you're doing 10 or 12 focus groups, and there's a couple of items where you are taking a tally. You're asking people to raise their hand or using some other mechanism to get some votes, as it were. In qualitative research, we never want to present that as a bar chart or a pie chart because it makes it look overly quantitative. So we need something creative. And in this example, I'm using some sort of like almost infographic-y icons to show that. And that way you're getting a bit of a design, again, that clean, flat design look that shows priorities, but without over-quantitating or over-quantifying qualitative data. So think about your own reports. Are you primarily creating reports that are, you know, every slide is basically a chart with one key bullet point? Are you creating reports where you have a lot of single column formats? That is, the text goes, you know, the text is in one column and takes up most of the slide. If that's the case, unfortunately, by today's standards, your reports might be looking a bit dated. So, you know, this is just one example, but think about, is there a way that you could update your PowerPoint template to better take advantage of current design aesthetics? So I hope that was useful. Think about your current reports. Think about reports you've delivered lately. Is it possible that some of your reports are looking kind of dated? Maybe you just need to refresh your PowerPoint template so that you have a better, more current use of your real estate in your slides, and you can take advantage of, you know, some of the sort of current use of icons and other infographic elements. I hope that conversation was useful for you. I do want to mention, for those of you who are Research Rockstar students, that our next session of our writing reports for qualitative research is coming up in July. So that starts on July 10th. That class meets once a week for 4 consecutive weeks. So it's 6 hours total of class time plus homework. And by the way, the PowerPoint template that I just showed as an example of more modern research, we actually in that class you're going to get that actual template, which might be a nice starting place for those of you who maybe have dated templates. So you can use our template as a way to sort of rethink your current PowerPoint template and think about what kind of template you want to create going forward. I hope that was a useful conversation, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them here. If you do enjoy these conversations, please do subscribe and like, and reviews are super helpful. Thanks so much.